Hi, and welcome to Broker Tools, where we unpack the tools, systems, and strategies that help brokers optimize the way they work. I'm Katie, your host, and today we are talking about how to transition from being a solopreneur into creating an agency or scaling up. Joining me for this conversation is Natalie from Beyond CFO. And Natalie works with brokers and business owners who are ready to grow more strategically, not just from an accounting or compliance perspective, but by building the financial systems, structure, and building out that clarity of support to have real scale. If you are ready to move from doing everything yourself to leading a business, then this episode is for you, because having the right systems and structures in place makes growth stop feeling overwhelming and starting to feel energizing. Natalie, welcome to the pod.
Hey, Katie, it's so great to be here. One of my favorite topics we're going to talk about today.
For sure. We obviously were having a pre-chat, which we always do in these podcasts, and systems and strategies is probably our favorite type of topic. We love to structure everything from start to finish. And one of the things, I guess the gift of doing this pod chat with you is that I'm going through this transition myself. So I'm moving from doing freelance type of work to building out an agency and support to have that whole scale and growth. What is probably one of the most common financial issues or structures have you found in that transition for people like myself or brokers who are moving from solo through to scaling?
Yeah, so it's a very common theme I find in any industry. It's really hard to transition from, I guess, being on the tools and, just doing everything yourself, because it's so easy to do that, to then actually I want to grow and scale my business. I want to either want more freedom, or I would like potentially to focus directly on client work rather than doing the admin side. There's a lot of things that you can consider when you're growing or scaling, and potentially the financial impact of that as well. So a lot of the times what we do is we work with all the systems and the software, as well as planning out the growth. So what we do is we start with a conversation, is where you at now, and what are you doing right now, and how does that look? So let's get financial clarity around where you're at. And then in part of the next phase of what we talk about is really looking at where you want to head. So what are your goals, whether it be financial, there's lots of goals you can have. It could be getting a day back a week and not working one day a week. So how can we optimize things for that to happen? Or you want to have an admin person, all of those goals. It doesn't need to be just financial. So it's like, and then along that journey, as we plan out, how are you going to get there? What does that look like? And I do always link it back to financial process and systems and information, because having that clarity over what's happening and the visibility enables you to make a lot better, easier decisions to grow your business, or to maybe potentially go in a different direction if it's not going exactly how planned when you get 6 or 12 months down the track.
Yeah. And when it comes to that financial clarity piece in the, I guess, beginning stages, what are some of the key areas that you actually look at so that people can begin to make that transition? Because I know from my own experience and having worked with a few other brokers, we don't always have clarity over our finances. It's almost like, in and out, like as in the beginning stages of my personal growth, which started like years and years ago, it was money just came in, I allocated it to whatever expenses needed, and then I would, reallocate the rest to myself. As a solo person, that's fine, but when you're growing, that no longer is sustainable.
Yeah, it requires a bit of a different level of planning, doesn't it? So I think in that instance, what we really do is we forecast, but what you do is you understand what that needs. So when I say forecast, I mean we go, all right, so if we're going to be able to grow our client base by X, and we're going to bring in this amount of extra revenue, that enables us to invest in resources, i.e. an admin person, or maybe more software, because there's a lot of software out there with this AI generation coming through as well, that can be utilized to create more efficiencies. So it's really just understanding from a financial perspective, where are you at? So let's actually get some financial statements that are up to date. So that's the difference between me potentially and another tax accountant. They are usually backwards looking. What we do is we get everything up to date, and then we look forwards and say, okay, well, if this is currently where you are, that's your current cash flow, how are we going to be able to scale and be able to spend our money differently? And then also like build in profits and or a salary for yourself. So making sure that that's all covered as part of the process.
Nice, because what you're doing here is like setting the stage, is what I would call it. Like, as in, this is where we are, and this is where you want to be. And in order to get here, there's this kind of gap.
Yeah, it's like a little roadmap. So it's being able to jump on Google Maps and find out which way you're going, but we can do it via a financial forecast process, which is it's really quite straightforward. It's me asking a bunch of questions, and also I do look historically what's happened and what you currently have. So understanding your operating expenses and how they work and what you're spending your money on now, and then also going, okay, well, if you want to get here, what do you need? And then costing that out. So for example, okay, you want to be able to mail out your customers a newsletter every week to increase your volume of return customers. Well, we currently don't have a software to do that. What software would we need? What's the cost of that? So we would plan that in. So it's really just understanding how your business plan is going to impact your financial position and what that does overall for the business to get to that goal, essentially.
Nice. And I guess then you also probably would look at what I call the humanness of sustainability. So how can you increase, leads or opportunities for you, because you may need to add in extra room so that you can cover those costs.
Yeah, totally. One of the biggest things that I do, which is probably a little bit different to most other financial support people, is I actually work from the very, very bottom and figure out, okay, well, if you need to convert X number of clients per week into a closed deal, how many leads do you require? What's your conversion rate on those leads? And also, what kind of marketing spend do you need to get those leads in? If it's referral based, we also consider that, but we still know that we need X number of referrals per week, and then we convert 50% of them. So for example, if we've got 4 referrals and we convert 50% of those and you get 2, and then 1 deal closes a week, that might be enough. But we just need to understand those metrics as part of the build up of revenue. So that's one side as well. It's like you said, you've nailed it. You've explained that, yes, we can look at expenses, but how are we going to cover those? For sure.
For sure. And like you said, because with the leads part, that's the part that then helps, people to have financial visibility over what they need to do next, especially if you're looking to bring on extra support.
Yeah, that's right. So knowing your top line and then knowing how you're going to spend proportions of that. So I break everything down into percentages. Say we know we want an admin person and we want to spend, $50,000 a year maybe on that person. We then know how much we need to make to cover that. In addition to that, we'll need software and computers and all of those things. So these are all the things that we go through as part of, okay, if you do want that resource, you've got X number of costs and that associated with that. And then we consider what the other opportunities around that are. Potentially, do you need someone full-time? Maybe not. Can you use a contractor to start with just to test your plan and to test things out? So what opportunities are there that we can play around with, that so we don't have to dive in potentially to that big cost? And because sometimes that feels a bit scary.
It would. And especially if you're not ready to do the leap, like as in you want to ease into the leap. That's
right.
And just doing a cost analysis in the get-go of currently where you are obviously always helps. But then that future planning and knowing your capacity to bring in more leads, because leads is obviously the biggest issue of any business, is making sure you have that big, because I guess it provides what we call a runway. Do you know what I mean? So that you can then you need to make that whole ongoing pathway sustainable, because then you'll still need to maintain those leads as you go along.
Yeah, or increase them, which is what the forecast shows as well. So the bigger you scale, the more leads you require to be able to cover the costs that are associated with running a more, I guess a bigger business.
Yes, and I guess this whole, process from start to finish, going through it, you're really helping a entrepreneur or person go through and really get that big vision going. Because once you start moving towards it, and once you start seeing the outcomes of it, you really now can go through and realize the opportunities that are available for you. And you can then start looking at maybe diversifying your streams of income from just leads into maybe other areas. What have you found have come across your path when doing that?
Yeah, exactly. I think that was a really good point, is that it enables you to open up the thinking around how can you do things differently. So some of the analysis we do as part of creating a forecast is looking at what is the most profitable client base or type of, for a mortgage broker, say, type of lending they're doing. So what's the most profitable for them, and also what do they like doing the most? Because sometimes what you like doing the most means that you can turn around quicker and you're more efficient with those, because you're very astute at that. And is that what you enjoy doing? Well, maybe lean into that a little bit more. So I think these things open up definitely the thinking and the discussions and the conversations around how can I do it differently, or how can I do it more efficient? And that's what these financial systems allow you to do as well. That's the point of them, is to be able to see really clearly trends, impacts, and all of these things. And that's I guess for me, that's where I come into play, is sometimes it's hard to know what tools are available to you to be able to create that.
Yeah, what tools are available? Do you want to go through some?
Yeah, well, Xero is the most common accounting system. So that's capturing all of your ins and your outs, like you said, when we distill it very basically.
Yep.
But now you've also got a lot of plugins that push into Xero, which allow you to do things differently. So that there's thousands of them. One that I use to support business intelligence reporting is called SIFT. And it's really helpful. So you can have that as an add-on, which then visualizes your trends without having somebody have to do it for you. So I can also train people on these tools and let them use them themselves, or have bookkeepers use them. It's all part of the process. But then in addition to that, you can also look at the metrics from your CRM and your sales pipelines for some of those. So it connects with SIFT specifically, connects with multiple other things, not just the financial package. So you can also bring in extra reporting that is just data as well. So if there is data laying around that you have historically, we can visualize that. So it's just got a lot of opportunity there. But I mean, where do you start and where do you finish? There is a lot of other financial systems that I know me and you have talked about in the past, like expense management systems that can really help you. There's a lot of things, but I think it comes back down to really that business plan. It's like, what is causing roadblocks or slowing you down to grow your business or to enable you to be more efficient?
Yeah, and why aren't you looking at your numbers? Sometimes people really aren't. They, like I said, in my early days, I was just money in, money out. And I found for my own self, I was just trying to stay alive in business. But then once you get that bit of headway.
That's very common though, Katie. Like the solopreneur, that's all that matters, is that you've got enough to live. That's what matters. But when you're transitioning into an ecosystem and a business that requires more, it requires more thinking and more, planning to make sure that you're not just worried about yourself. That's where this transition becomes, I guess, overwhelming sometimes.
And I guess you have to understand yourself at that moment of feeling overwhelmed. Do you bury your head in the sand, or do you go out and seek support?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
And I guess this is what your process helps with, because whether they go with you or a different financial advisor, it's or CFO, it's this part where you should start looking at your numbers, because this is where the quality of decision making can help you grow your agency.
Yeah, that's right. Like, I call it visibility. It's clarity and visibility over what's actually happening, and it goes across multiple areas of the business. So it's not just looking at your profit and loss and going, I'm making a profit, that's great. It's looking deeper than that. Like you said, what's it costing to get those leads? Or do we need to spend more money to get more leads? Or how are those customers going? Are they profitable or not? Like, doing this particular lending engagement, is that costing me and my time and my, all my effort to do that kind, or should we do this? And that's what I'm talking about looking at multiple areas. I think that's the key. It's not just purely P&L focused, profit and loss focused.
Which is really a fantastic view to have, because sure, your profit and loss, your income, they all matter, but you as the human have to do the execution. And if you don't have capacity because your personal life circumstances can't afford it because you're in survival mode, it's how do we get you to move from the survival mode a little bit forward so that you can have this business scaled agency life that you're looking for.
Yeah, and I also lean into, I think a lot of people call it this gut feel thing. So we generally run on that, process in ourselves while it's just us. It's like, oh, I think this is right, so I'm going to run with it, or I think this software will work, so I'll give it a crack. But what this, I guess, process that I run with my clients is just a whole next level, is it looks at data, it looks at history, it also looks at forward planning, and then brings in, like, it's like building a house. You go out there and you get a whole heap of quotes and you work out what you're going to do, and you've got 3 different ideas on how this might land, and then you choose which one you want to go with. It might not be the cheapest, it might not be the most expensive, but it's what you want to do because you enjoy that person, you know that he communicates or she communicates just as good, and you choose that path because that's the path that resonates with you. So it's not about just going, we're all just going for the same goal and trying to hit the same outcome either. It's really focused and customized on your business and where you want to head.
Yeah, and I guess as you were saying, it really made me think about lifestyle as well. So the whole purpose of having, I guess, good clarity over your numbers and your metrics is to, one, obviously move past survival and just, getting the numbers in so you can make a living. But that whole growth scale is now allocating some of that income that you make to the lifestyle that you're looking to build. And by having the lifestyle, it's not just your personal life outside of it, but the one that you have within your business.
Yeah, it's hard not to integrate them when you're a solopreneur. And if you can move forwards to have more freedom or less stress, that's also so important.
Completely. If you were to, I guess, take people through the next steps of what they could do to self-assess, what would you suggest them to do so that they could start looking at how to scale and grow?
Probably the first thing that I would focus on is getting your profit and loss into a space where it is broken down into the right buckets. So that you can look at these things that I've been talking about. We know what our revenue is. We know how many clients it takes to get that revenue, and we know what it costs to create that revenue. So it's almost giving yourself like a benchmark on where you're at, essentially. So you go in and you understand all of those things, understand what your current net profit is so that you know what you can take home. And then from there, you would work through a process of even just using one of your chat AIs to help ask you some questions on how do I ascertain what my goals are. So do I want to work 4 days a week? or do I want to work school hours potentially? So at the moment I'm working a 50-hour week and it's stressful, and yes, I'm doing a great job, but what do I need to do to change that if that's my goal? So just understanding what your goals are and where you want to head. And if you want to maintain your revenue and get support from admin staff, do I need to increase my revenue? So they're the things that become a little bit hard to do on your own sometimes, but knowing your goals is the next step. Once you know your goals, then you can, like I said, plan out how you're going to achieve those.
Nice. And that part is, now you have clarity of where you are. And if you notice that, for example, you might want to add on a new admin staff, you can then now go do a cost analysis of what that would be like.
Exactly. Go and do some research, talk to some other people in the industry to see what they're doing, or whatever, how they're, I guess, utilizing admin staff. If they need someone full time, just do some research, right? And then figure out, well, what would I like? How would I like this to work? Do I want someone, who's in Australia, or do I want a virtual VA, or how can I support myself with admin? There's so many ways to do it, right? So
Yeah.
the cost analysis is one part, but it's also deciding what you want as a human as well.
Completely. And one of the things I have noticed from an admin point of view with the broking world is that there's a service out there like Promptli that does, credit analysis work, and they just do it on a case-by-case basis. So you send them the scenario that you need them to do the credit analysis for. And so you're only just paying for it as a case-by-case, which is what you were saying earlier, is you don't have to go out and hire a credit analyst from the get-go. You can just do small tests to see what works for you. The other way is using like services like Proowrx, who hire and find people in India, and they make sure that everybody has 6 months training. I don't know their pricing. You obviously have to go to those services, but they're kind of services that are already available out there for brokers, that if you are trying to begin that process of moving out of doing everything by yourself, and getting a credit analysis on a, I wouldn't say cheaper scale, but obviously hiring an Australian employee versus just a short-term employee or a overseas employee makes all the difference.
Yeah, and what that also just highlighted for me is this is all part of the planning process. So if you can easily get a cost to do that per client and understand for each application what you need, and you understand the cost of that, this can all go into the planning as well. So it's like you said, exactly, you can either use that service or you can do it a different way, and those costs could be different. And then knowing, okay, well, if I'm going to scale, I know I can outsource certain parts of this process. So it's understanding, you already know on the back of your hand exactly how you run your process. How can you distill that down into pieces which you can outsource, whether it's an internal person or an external person or external service, to be able to enable you to scale further, to be more client facing.
Yeah, and then this is where the true opportunities really, support that growth. Where do you take people next?
So once you've got your plan and your way of working probably documented a little bit more, or at least clear. So as part of the planning and forecasting, you would be pretty clear on how you would like to transition in the first instance. So you look maybe 3 months and do a trial of what we just discussed, implementing some of these outsourcing. You would then just make sure that you've got enough in the kitty to push growth. So ensure that your bank balances is at a point, you just ascertain you're ready to grow, or whether you need to just quickly gather some profits to be able to invest in your business, or whether you can claw back potentially some cash that you've got sitting in your personal name. So these things just help you grow, just knowing what you need, if that makes sense. So I go from that point to then moving into a space where you ensure that you've got all the systems set up financially to be able to report and measure how your growth is going. So that's enabling and ensuring Xero is set up correctly, and that customized reporting is set up, and then potentially having add-ons like SIFT. You would set all that up, and then from there you would make sure that your bookkeeping is up to date at minimum every month. And then you would be looking back every month and seeing how you went from the forecast and the plan that you put together compared to actuals. So then you know how you're tracking. So that would be the exact process that I would take with a client. Out of that, there's some key things that we would identify as important for you and your business. So margins around either customers individually or revenue streams, like you were saying, diversifying revenue streams, those things that the reporting would start to enable you to see what's happening. Again, clarity around, all right, I think this is where we're headed and I think this is what's going to make money. This was our plan, it was going to make money. Is it actually going to plan?
Yeah.
And then a check-in with yourself probably at those intervals as well. Is like, is this still what I want? And also, is this revenue generation or this diversification, if you've gone down that road, or customer diversification working for me? So again, it's always just, I continue to check in with the business owner to make sure that that's what they want, that's where they're headed. How are they going with actioning, like increasing leads to ensure they're hitting their revenue targets and things like that. So there would be a plan in place of how you're going to get to that goal, and we're checking back in with that plan.
Nice. And I just want to get clarity on clawbacks, because clawbacks can be an awful word in the brokering world. What you meant by clawbacks is how you hold back spending on certain things. Is that correct? Because clawbacks usually in the broking world means a bank has come and said, I want to take that money or commission back from you.
Yeah, I understand what clawbacks are in the mortgage broking world. So probably just terminology that I've used, but definitely it's more around just understanding your cost base or changing or shifting your perspective on what you're aiming to do more rather than. But clawback is also part of something that you need to forecast for. So that's something as well that, okay, historically we know that there's been a shift in the customer's situation. Say 20% of customers we've seen clawbacks for. We need to build that into your forecast. So we got to assume that that's actually going to happen, because historically it has proven that does happen. It's very unusual for it not to happen. So even having a contingency for it is so important.
Yeah. What other financial blind spots have you also seen in that whole expansion growth as people build volume?
Yeah, so most of the things we've spoken about, it's easy to go down the track of thinking sometimes that a new revenue stream is going to be profitable, and then sometimes it doesn't turn out as you expected. So that's always a blind spot. If you're not keeping your finger on the pulse on those kind of broken down areas of your business and what's important, it'll be different for different businesses, whether it be like customer segment versus revenue type or application type. So I think that's really key. Also watching your supplier costs. So if you are using particular suppliers to do certain parts of the process, or different ways of getting your revenue in, you just need to focus on those as well and make sure there's no risk around overspend with reliability and all of those things. And then just the usual things around margins. So making sure that the margin you're expecting to make is what you're actually making. So there's no little hidden costs that sneak in because you agreed to do something a different way or whatever it is. It's really just going, okay, well, that's what we were expecting. Are we hitting those margins? And also your spending percentages. So one of the things I do really talk to when I'm working with new clients is understanding the breakdown. So if revenue is 100%, what does that break down into to then leave you with a net profit? So for example, you might have some software and some, I'm just trying to think of what else exactly costs, but just a bunch of costs basically, essentially, that comes out of your revenue, plus you want to pay yourself and all your resources, whoever you're using. And so maybe that total is like 40%. And then potentially it costs you 5% in advertising. So say we're 45%. So then you're left with 55% at the bottom. Let's just assume that we're just making a lot of good net profit margin here.
Yeah.
And yeah, and 55%.
Win the day.
Sorry?
I said, let's win the day. Just let's assume all the wins.
Yeah, exactly. And it just depends about how you've got it structured and set up. Like everybody does things differently. Like you might not pay yourself, but you might distribute that net profit 100% to yourself. So anyway, but what I'm trying to get at is like it's 100%. How's that broken down to and understand and enable your best position at the end of the day and increasing profits and what we can change to do that. So knowing those buckets, but then reporting against them to be able to actually see what's happening in real life, I feel like is a very strong discussion on a monthly basis. And once you understand what they are, it's really basic, right? So it's just maths. And I know we don't all love maths, but if you've got a report that's doing it for you and showing you what those percentages are, and you know what your target percentage is, it's really easy to compare, I feel.
Yeah, and I guess the transition for me, and I know this is probably like a very childish analogy, is I love Mario Kart, do you know what I mean? Or any of those like games that you play. Yeah. So this is like collecting coins. Do you know what I mean? And then you build up like your wealth, and then you can buy like bazookas and other things to, you know, blast off. Sure, if you are finding it overwhelming to look at your numbers straight up because it's hard, if you start treating it like a game of metrics that you can optimize for your growth, that's the part that it makes it more energizing. And when I started visualizing it like that, it became a lot more fun of a game for me.
I love this. That is such a good way to put it, because basically if you spend all your money on bazookas and things to make you, I don't know, race better, but then you still end up with zero and die, it's just not going to work. So it's the same thing. So you need to keep some coins there just in case you need them to buy another bazooka right at the end. So
blast off.
Blast off.
Thank you so much for this chat, Natalie. If people wanted to reach out to you, where should they go and what should they do?
Probably the best place to find me is on my website or via LinkedIn. They're the two areas I hang out. So my website is beyondcfo.com.au. Very simple. And Natalie at Beyond CFO. If you do a Google search, you'll see my LinkedIn pop up really easily and quickly. And yeah, but by all means, give me a call. So go to my website, give me a call. Happy to have a free consultation and just talk through where you're at and what your goals are. It's very easy to just have a conversation. I love just finding out what people are doing. It's my passion to help small businesses and specifically getting people to expand and grow. So exciting.
It's so exciting. Again, thank you. If you do have comments for Natalie or myself, feel free to put them down below. We will happily reach out and come back to you. But again, do all the good things like share and follow. Again, thank you so much for this conversation, Natalie.
Thank you, Katie. It's been great chatting to you about all things finance.
You're welcome. Bye.